The story kicks off in the past, on a dusty road to a village. A farmer's cart is stopped dead by a ruthless and feared criminal. The terrified farmers are frozen, powerless to act, until a stunningly beautiful young woman named Neil steps forward. She demands he let them go, but he refuses. His leader arrives, expecting to confront a man, and is shocked to find a mere village girl standing defiantly before him and his entire gang. Enraged, the gang leader beats Neil himself until she collapses to the ground. A young woman, seemingly too weak to fight back. But then, a brilliant point of light pierces the air and enters Neil's body. Her form shimmers and transforms, radiating a power so immense, the very earth trembles beneath her feet. She rises. With a single blow, she sends the gang leader flying. His men, horrified by her strength, open fire, only to be stunned, as Neil deflects their bullets with ease. She defeats them one by one until the shattered remnants of the gang flee in panic. Neil continues to the village and enters a small bar. All conversation stops as every eye turns to her in shock. She walks straight to her father, Sam, and tells him she is alive and has come home to live with him again. He is devastated, having believed she lost her life long ago after running away with her lover. Stunned, he cannot even welcome her. Her sister, Roxy, works as a maid in a house nearby and hears that Neil has returned from the war, alone, without her beloved. Roxy rushes home, embraces her sister with joy, and takes her outside with their other sister, Georgina. There, Neil recounts her entire story from the day she fled until her return. They reveal they heard she died in battle long ago, and even built a grave for her in the village to keep her memory alive. Meanwhile, a young man named Thomas arrives at his family's manor. He is the son of the village governor, Blanchford. He eagerly goes to greet his father and sister Sophia, but his father immediately confronts him. He berates Thomas for being a reckless troublemaker who brutalizes the villagers. Blanchford delivers an ultimatum: change your ways or be disinherited. Everything will go to Sophia instead. Thomas is shattered. His entire life and massive debts depend on that inheritance. He decides then and there he must get rid of his father. Back at the bar, Sam throws a huge party to celebrate Neil's return. As Neil gets dressed, she tells her sisters again about the illuminated point and the supernatural strength it grants her. They don't believe her, thinking she's lying to impress them. Suddenly, the celebration is shattered by gunshots. Thomas has arrived at the bar, firing his weapon randomly into the air. Alarmed, Neil goes downstairs to confront him. He speaks to her with utter contempt, demanding she fetch her sister Roxy for him. Neil snaps, telling him Roxy doesn't love him and only tolerates him out of fear. She orders him to leave. Thomas, enraged, orders his guards to raid the bar. He grabs Neil, pulling her close, taunting her to see if she'll dare speak to him like that again. Neil tries to endure it, waiting for her power to activate. Her father desperately wants to help, but is pinned down by guards. Just as hope seems lost, the illuminated point streaks into the room and enters Neil's body. She rises from the ground with newfound force and attacks Thomas, striking him down in front of the entire stunned crowd. Thomas himself is shocked, unable to process how to react or even fight back. Thomas's guards swiftly intervene, pulling him away and retreating back to the palace. That night, Neil wakes to find a tiny, human-like creature named Bali standing before her. She understands he is a magical being, the true source of her superhuman power, granted to strike back at anyone who harms her. He scolds her, blaming her for provoking Thomas in the first place. Neil fires back, furious, telling him that Thomas has been terrorizing the entire village. As they argue, Georgina enters the room, and Bali vanishes. Neil is forced to tell her sister no one was there, lest Georgina think she's lost her mind. The next day, Thomas goes to see the governor of a neighboring region, a man named Robert. He confesses his father's threat of disinheritance and asks for Robert's help to kill Blanchford and claim the entire inheritance for himself. Robert agrees to help, but on one condition: Thomas must swear absolute loyalty and obedience to him. Back at the bar, Neil tells her father, Sam, that she must leave the village again to rejoin the army. He is bewildered and hurt. She just returned home. Though he pleads for her to stay, she refuses. That same night, Thomas arrives at the bar and kidnaps Sam without anyone seeing. The next morning, his daughters wake to the devastating news. Roxy is the one who finds their father's body. She is shattered, in utter disbelief, and immediately suspects Thomas. But with no power or proof, she and her sisters can do nothing but collapse in grief. To make matters worse, Their sister Neil has already abandoned them, having fled that very day. Meanwhile, in the governor's palace, Blanchford learns the truth. His son and his soldiers murdered Sam. Thomas coldly explains he did it to punish Sam for Neil's attack on him. Blanchford is furious that his son would commit such an atrocity over a slight from a weak girl. He wants to have Thomas tried and taught a lesson, but he cannot bring himself to prosecute his own heir. Instead, he banishes all the guards who were accomplices in the crime. One of these exiled guards, Russell, goes to the bar. He tells Roxy the whole truth, his clear admiration for her showing. Needing to return to the palace before his absence is noted, he turns to leave. Roxy desperately asks for one final favor, to find her sister Neil and bring her back. He agrees. Neil is in a nearby town on her way to enlist. When she spots the gang leader she defeated on the road, she is stunned. He introduces himself as Charles and admits he is deeply impressed by her and her incredible power. He invites her to lunch and she accepts, joining him in a restaurant. A short while later, her sisters find her there and tell her everything. Neil is shattered. She returns with them immediately. Back home, facing her father's body, she cannot believe what has happened. Using her experience from war, she examines him and makes a chilling discovery. He was already dead before he was shot. She is certain Thomas is responsible, and Russell confirms her suspicion. Neil is forced to take action. She goes to confront Governor Blanchford at his palace. She lays out the truth and demands he put his son on trial for their father's murder. Blanchford, however, insists on his son's innocence. Neil tells him she knows everything. Cornered, Blanchford makes a despicable offer. He will sign the bar and the house over to her. In exchange, she must stay silent and forget what happened. Neil is appalled by his audacity. She can't believe that Thomas truly killed her father just for revenge against her. As she leaves the palace in disgust, Thomas arrives to speak with his father. He demands that Blanchford expel Neil and her sisters from the village, claiming they bring nothing but trouble. Blanchford agrees immediately, knowing full well that Thomas's obsession with Roxy is the root of all these crimes. He believes that by tormenting her family, he can somehow win her heart. The next day, Neil is horrified to learn that Governor Blanchford has leased their house and bar to someone else. They have just one day before they are thrown out onto the streets with nowhere to go. A furious Neil rushes to the governor's palace. She finds Blanchford calmly dining with his children. Enraged that he lied and went back on his deal for the bar, she confronts him. He coldly states he has changed his mind and that it's best if she and her sisters leave the village for good. Neil shouts. In a flash, she draws a pistol and points it at Thomas. The room freezes. Thomas panics, believing it's an empty threat. But Neil's rage intensifies. She presses the barrel against Thomas's temple and issues an ultimatum to Blanchford. Put your son on trial for murder, or I will kill him right now. Blanchford, seeing the wild determination in her eyes, agrees. Put the gun down, and I will give you what you want, he pleads. The moment the words leave his mouth, Thomas understands the truth. His own father is sacrificing him. A switch flips. Seizing the opportunity, Thomas draws his own hidden pistol and shoots his father point blank. Chaos erupts. In the stunned silence, Thomas points a shaking finger at Neil. She killed the governor, he screams to the guards. His sister Sophia, pale and terrified, is forced to confirm his lie to protect what's left of her family. Neil bolts from the palace, with the guard Russell close on her heels. They race back to the bar, gather her sisters, and flee the village on horseback, heading for the forest. On the road, Neil tells them everything. They believe her without question. She did not kill the governor. As they push deeper into the woods, they spot a carriage. With no other option, Neil ambushes it, forcing the passengers out at gunpoint to steal their ride. Her sisters are horrified she has become a thief, but Neil explains it was the only way to escape. She thanks Russell for his help, but tells him he must return to the palace. His journey with them is over. She plans to take her sisters to their uncle's and then disappear. Russell is hurt and wants to stay, but Neil refuses. He is left behind as the three sisters drive on. Neil soon notices Roxy is distant and heartbroken. Roxy confesses she has feelings for Russell and that he was devoted to helping them in Neil's absence because of his admiration for her. Unlike her romantic sister, Neil is all grim practicality and has no patience for talk of love or sentiment. Suddenly, the road is blocked. It's Charles and his gang. Most of the outlaws flee in terror upon seeing Neil, but Charles and one loyal guard stand their ground. The illuminated point arrives, and Bali grants Neil her power. She effortlessly disarms the guard and turns on Charles. Just as she's about to strike, Russell emerges from the shadows, holding a knife to Charles's throat. Charles surrenders. He then reveals crucial information. Thomas and Sophia have put a massive bounty on Neil's head, and they've enlisted a notoriously ruthless government agent named Gerald to hunt her. Charles admits he was on his way to warn her after learning she was heading to her uncle's, as Gerald would surely track her there. He proposes a new plan. They should all go into hiding at a hotel. They agree. After changing their clothes, they arrive at a grand hotel, posing as a married noble couple, Charles and Neil, with their servants, the sisters, and private guard, Russell. They check in. Their nerves spike when they spot their own wanted posters on the wall behind the front desk, but the clerk doesn't seem to notice. They secure their rooms without incident. The next day, Thomas holds a lavish funeral for his father. He plays the part of the grieving son, but his sorrow is mixed with the grim satisfaction of having secured his inheritance, just as Robert advised. After the ceremony, he returns to the palace, alone. There, in the oppressive silence, he sees a phantom, a ghostly vision of his father, still alive, the bullet wound glaring in the middle of his forehead. Thomas is consumed by terror and a crushing, inescapable guilt. The specter of his patricide haunts him, a price for his ambition that no amount of wealth can erase. At that moment, Governor Robert goes to see Sophia. He wants to confirm that Thomas was the one who killed his father. Sophia lies to him, telling him that Neil is the criminal. It's clear she's doing this to cover for her brother and protect their newfound fortune. While they are talking, Gerald enters and informs them he hasn't captured Neil yet. Sophia, furious, demands he find her by any means necessary, and even increases the bounty on her head. 3 full days later, a hotel employee arrives at the palace and tells Thomas that Neil and her companions are staying at his hotel. Sophia is overjoyed. She will finally capture Neil and present her for trial in her brother's place. She thanks the informant profusely and sends him away. She then turns to Charles, her tone sharp and commanding. She tells him to forget the past and wake up to reality so they can seize control of the village, as Thomas has become a broken, miserable wreck since their father's death. She confesses to Thomas that she is only helping him because she is greedy for the wealth. If he were tried, they would lose everything. Meanwhile, in the dungeon of his own palace, Governor Robert removes his shirt, revealing intricate tattoos covering his body. He begins a dark, magical ritual to summon a guardian from another world to destroy Neil. Neil, at that moment, is at a palace in the city attending a party with Charles, who is pretending to be her husband. In the middle of the festivities, Bali appears and warns Neil that Sophia, the army, and the gangs are all on their way to her location. Neil panics, wanting to flee but unsure how. Before she can act, Sophia arrives, triumphant that she is finally about to eliminate Neil. Suddenly, a massive guardian, covered head to toe in iron armor, appears at the venue. This is the being summoned by Robert, who is now remotely controlling it, directing its movements. A long, brutal battle ensues between Neil and the armored guardian. Bali grants Neil her superhuman strength. After an extended struggle, Neil manages to gather her power, strikes the guardian, and defeats it with surprising ease. Each blow to the guardian visibly wounds Robert in his dungeon. Neil finally beheads the guardian just before it can kill her. Charles arrives, grabs Neil, and they rush to escape the palace. Outside, they find Russell waiting with a carriage. Neil jumps in with him to make a quick getaway, while Charles mounts his own horse. On the road, they notice Gerald's men are persistently following them. Charles creates a diversion to draw the guards away from Neil's carriage. During the chaos, Neil discovers, to her horror, that her sister Georgina has been hit by a stray bullet. She orders Russell to stop immediately. He drives them into an isolated, abandoned village where they can hide from the guards and treat Georgina's wound. Georgina is terrified, but Neil reassures her everything will be okay. Using her skills, Neil successfully removes the bullet from her sister's shoulder and tells her to rest until the next day. It is then revealed that the guards managed to capture Charles. He is imprisoned in the palace dungeon and put on trial to answer for all the crimes in his history. He denies everything, insisting he is innocent and from a wealthy family. The judge orders him imprisoned until his identity can be verified, and they can confirm whether he is truly the wanted criminal or not. Meanwhile, in England, the Queen is in her palace with her advisors. She learns about Neil and the giant armored guardian she defeated so easily. The Queen tells them an old legend speaks of such a guardian, and its appearance on the kingdom's soil is an omen that the monarch will lose their life. She considers making Neil her personal guard, since if she defeated the guardian once, she could do it again. Her advisors, however, inform her that this Neil is a wanted criminal, accused of killing the governor of her village. The queen is displeased, as she had felt that with Neil, the legendary guardian could be easily defeated. The scene shifts to Governor Robert in his palace, where his personal physician diagnoses him with a severe magical illness, a direct consequence of summoning the otherworldly guardian. As soon as the doctor leaves, Sophia enters and demands Robert's help. She wants to learn dark magic herself to defeat Neil and exact revenge for destroying her life. We then see Neil in the abandoned village with her sister Georgina, who has taken a turn for the worse, her fever spiking. Neil decides to risk going to the city herself to find a healer. Her companions are terrified for her safety, but she reassures them. Disguising herself as an English princess, she succeeds in convincing a doctor named Henry to return with her. On the journey back, Neil learns that Charles is now imprisoned in the palace dungeon. She is deeply upset, feels guilty, and resolves to rescue him after saving her younger sister. Back in the abandoned village, Roxy is tending to Georgina when a mysterious light appears in the room, pointing her to a book of herbal remedies. Roxy opens it and finds a recipe for healing wounds. She is astonished but doesn't know how to gather the ingredients. Stepping outside, she miraculously finds all the necessary herbs right in front of the house. She prepares the remedy and begins treating her sister. Dr. Henry arrives and is shocked to discover his companion is the infamous fugitive Neil. However, he chooses to ignore her status and focuses on treating Georgina. He discovers the herbal remedy Roxy applied and praises her for saving her sister's life. He decides to reopen and properly treat the wound to ensure a full recovery. Meanwhile, in the palace dungeon, Charles is visited by his fiancée, Yolanda. It's revealed that Charles is actually from a very wealthy family and has been working undercover with the bandits. Yolanda says she is willing to secure his release, but only on one condition. He must prove he isn't in love with Neil, as rumors suggest. Charles cannot bring himself to lie, as he has indeed grown fond of Neil. Yolanda leaves him in prison. Back at the village, Dr. Henry successfully treats Georgina. He advises Neil to care for her sister for 4 days and apologizes for initially suspecting her. He suggests she visit the judge's brother, a man named Tableau, to tell her story and seek help in clearing her name. Grateful, Neil asks Roxy to care for Georgina while she's gone. We then see Sophia with Robert in his palace. She demands he teach her everything about magic. He agrees, but on one condition: she must help him assassinate the Queen of England. Sophia is stunned to learn of a conspiracy against the monarch, with plans to install a new king named James. However, she doesn't care about politics. Her only goal is destroying Neil. She swears an oath to help him. She also confronts Robert with her suspicion that he was the one who encouraged Thomas to kill their father. Robert lies, deflecting blame and claiming Thomas only said that to ease his own guilt. Sophia believes him and decides to become his apprentice, seeing it as the path to destroying both the Queen and Neil. Robert is pleased, seeing her as a useful pawn. Neil then goes to meet Judge Tableau. She begins telling him her entire story, pleading for his help to prove her innocence. Suddenly, in the middle of her testimony, the judge collapses and loses consciousness. One of his aides enters and discovers, to his horror, that the judge is dead. He immediately accuses Neil of the murder. Terrified, Neil jumps out a window to escape before more guards arrive. She succeeds and returns to the abandoned village. Knowing she is now wanted for another capital crime, she disguises herself as a man. She tells her sisters and Russell they must gather their things and flee immediately. They all travel to her Uncle Jack's house. There, Neil reveals her true identity to her uncle. She explains the whole country is hunting her for a crime she didn't commit. She begs him to let her sisters stay with him and to give Roxy work in his bar. She tells him her new plan. She will break Charles out of prison, and the two of them will flee to America. Once there, she will work and send money so he can send her sisters to join her. Jack agrees, promising to keep the girls safe. Neil, taking Russell with her, then sets out for the prison to rescue Charles. That evening, we see Sophia in Robert's palace, happily practicing magic. She is thrilled to finally be a sorceress. During a meal, Robert shows her an extremely powerful and dangerous grimoire. He tells her he will use it to create a new spell, to either kill Neil or trap her in a specific location until she can be captured. Sophia is overjoyed. Her plan for revenge is nearing completion. That same night at her uncle's house, Georgina is looking out her window when she sees a traveling theater troupe led by a man named Jafar. She watches their show from her window, trying to stay hidden. However, Jafar spots her. After the performance, He goes to her room and kidnaps her. His plan is to use Georgina as bait to force Neil to come to him, so he can then capture Neil and claim the massive bounty. The next day, Neil is outside the prison, devising a way to break Charles out. Bali tells her flatly he won't help her free a criminal. She and Russell instead sit in a cafe across from the prison. There, Russell confesses his deep love for Roxy and his desire to marry her. Neil shuts him down, saying it's absolutely not the time and that he's far too old for her. As they talk, they overhear a prison guard frantically searching for a doctor. Neil seizes the opportunity. She steals a doctor's bag, approaches the guard, and enters the prison posing as a physician. She examines a sick prisoner and declares he has a severe contagious disease that could infect everyone, including the wealthy visitors who come to see the famous prisoner, Charles, before his trial. The guard panics. Neil offers to examine every prisoner to contain the outbreak, starting with Charles. Inside his cell, she examines him and claims he has a fever. She orders the guard to leave immediately to avoid infection. Alone with Charles, she reveals her plan. He will drink a sedative. She will pronounce him dead, and she will rescue him when they take his body out for burial. Charles is terrified of the plan and refuses. At that moment, his fiancée, Yolanda, arrives. She announces she's hired a top lawyer to secure his release. Relieved, Neil decides to leave him in prison, believing the legal route is safer. However, the moment Neil leaves the cell, she confesses the truth to Yolanda. Betrayed and furious, Yolanda alerts the guards and confronts Charles for lying and using her. The guards capture Neil and throw her into a cell overcrowded with children. Bali appears in the prison and grants Neil her magical strength. She tears the iron bars apart with her bare hands, freeing all the children and leading a mass prison break. Charles, however, chooses not to flee and remains in his cell. Neil herself is still inside when Russell finds her after the chaos. All doors now open. He urges her to run immediately. Illusion, a trick by Sophia. Neil braves the illusion, passes through the wall with ease, and escapes the collapsing prison. However, she cannot find Russell in the chaos and is forced to flee without him. Back in the palace, Sophia collapses from the immense magical energy expended. Meanwhile, in the city, a wealthy young woman named Polly is celebrating in a bar. Jafar, the theater troupe leader, arrives to kidnap her, mistakenly thinking she is Roxy. He and his men are disappointed to find she's not Neil's sister, but they take her anyway. From her captivity, Georgina manages to write a letter to her uncle, explaining she's been kidnapped and that only Neil can save her. When Neil returns to her uncle's house and discovers her youngest sister is missing, she is devastated and immediately decides to rescue her. In the governor's palace, Robert visits a guilt-ridden Thomas, who is still haunted by his father's death. Robert offers him a way out of the guilt and a taste of supernatural power. He gives Thomas a serpent-shaped necklace, telling him to wear it to forget the past. The moment Thomas puts it on, the serpent animates, coiling tightly around his neck. Thomas feels relief, and his guilt fades, replaced by a desire for power. He agrees to help Robert overthrow the queen. Later, Robert meets with Sophia. Russell, who has been secretly observing them, seizes a moment when Sophia is alone to speak with her. He tells her his story of being a lost orphan who never knew his real name, and how he was happy serving her and Thomas because they were kind. He begs her to betray Robert, who is only using her. Sophia barely listens. She notices his wounded arm and tells him he needs to tend to it immediately. She takes the bloodied bandage from his arm and keeps it with her as she leaves the room. At that moment, Neil goes to the bandit leader's hideout to rescue her kidnapped sister. When she arrives, she discovers Jafar kidnapped Georgina to lure and kill Neil. He presents her with a deadly game: 2 cups of water, 1 poisoned. He will drink one, and she must drink the other. He hands her the poisoned cup. To save her sister, Neil is prepared to sacrifice herself. She takes the cup and is about to drink the poison when Bali intervenes at the last possible second. He magically switches the cups, placing the poisoned one in Jafar's hand instead. The moment Jafar drinks, he collapses as the poison takes effect, shocking everyone present. Roxy then storms the hideout, rescues Georgina, and fights off the guards. As they are about to make their escape, a woman from the gang cries out. She is going into labor. Neil decides to use her experience to help deliver the baby. Her act of kindness reveals her true, compassionate nature to the bandits, contradicting her villainous reputation. After the successful birth, Neil, her sisters, and the kidnapped wealthy girl, Polly, escape the hideout. Meanwhile, Robert goes to meet the queen. Posing as a loyal supporter, he warns her of a traitor within her own palace who seeks her life. He offers to personally move her to a secure location for her protection. Fearful for her life, the queen believes him. Neil, seeking to repair her reputation, goes to the press headquarters, where she finds Yolanda is the chief editor. Furious at the damaging stories published about her, Neil initially wants to destroy the place. But Bali convinces her that Yolanda is not inherently evil. Instead, Neil approaches an employee, demanding to publish an article to change public perception of her. The staff refuse, saying only Yolanda can authorize it. Neil orders Polly to write the article while they wait for Yolanda to arrive. At that moment, Russell finds them and updates them on everything. He reveals that Sophia and Thomas are now under Robert's sinister magical control and begs Neil to help him save them from Robert's influence. Simultaneously, Charles is in court, still maintaining his innocence and denying his life as a bandit. When no one believes him, he leaps from his place and attempts to flee the courtroom before he can be captured again. Back at the palace, Sophia goes to discuss the plan to assassinate the queen with Robert. She notices he is evasive and secretive, and she finally realizes he has been lying to her from the beginning. His only goal was to magically control her and her brother. Deciding to rely on herself for revenge against Neil, she descends into the palace dungeon once more. Using the bloodied cloth she took from Russell's wound, Sophia performs a strange blood magic ritual, setting the cloth on fire. This allows her to locate Russell and magically possess Yolanda's body, using her to physically attack Neil. As the possessed Yolanda assaults Neil, Georgina intervenes. She begins to sing, directing her words at Sophia's true spirit. She tells Sophia she is a good person who would never hurt anyone, and that Robert is to blame for corrupting her with dark magic. Deeply moved, Sophia breaks the spell. Yolanda returns to her senses and, horrified, apologizes profusely to Neil. She now believes in Neil's innocence and is determined to help restore her public image. She reads the article written by Polly, is deeply impressed, and decides to publish it widely. She also offers Polly a job at the newspaper. Back at Robert's palace, Sophia goes to him, intending to betray him. In front of his council, she lies, claiming Neil has discovered their entire plan to kidnap the queen and move her. She does this to force him to change his strategy, seeing it as her chance to eliminate both Neil and Robert at once. Afterwards, Neil and the tiny creature Bali set out to rescue the queen from Robert. After a long journey, a royal carriage appears on the road. Thinking it carries the queen, Neil attacks, only to be shocked when Charles emerges instead. He explains the queen fled in a pauper's cart to evade bandits. Frustrated at another dead end, Neil lets him go. The queen, however, has already been delivered to Robert's palace. The moment she arrives, she realizes his deceit. It was all a ploy to get her there, depose her, and install a new king named James. Suddenly, all of Robert's guards surround her, weapons drawn, forcing her surrender before imprisoning her. Meanwhile, Neil and her team in the forest learn the queen's location. Neil storms the palace, fighting her way through waves of guards to get back inside. Once in the throne room, she reveals Robert's true plan to Sophia. He intends to destroy both her and Thomas after using them. Sophia decides to turn on him first. She keeps him talking as a distraction, then suddenly uses her magic to hurl a statue at him from behind, knocking him down. A furious Robert unleashes his own, far greater power, paralyzing Sophia where she stands. He finally confesses the truth. He has been using her and Thomas from the start as pawns to seize the throne. To demonstrate his control, he activates the dark magic in Thomas's serpent necklace. It comes alive, burrowing viciously into Thomas's flesh. Thomas screams in agony, helpless to remove it. Russell and Roxy arrive, drawn by the screams. Russell rushes to help but is horrified by the sight. In the chaos, a devastating truth spills out. Russell's real name is Adam, and he was a lost prince kidnapped as a child. Governor Blanchford had bought him, knowing his identity, but refusing to return him to his royal family. Russell collapses upon learning he was so close to his true home. Roxy rushes to Thomas's side, trying to pull the cursed necklace free. Neil finds the queen tied up in another room and quickly frees her, only to discover she is an imposter, another of Robert's traps. Robert himself appears, grabbing Neil by the throat. The fake queen also attacks her. Just as Neil is being choked, Roxy finally wrenches the serpent necklace from Thomas's body. The moment it is removed, the imposter queen vanishes, and Robert's dark magic shatters. Enraged, Robert drags Neil outside for a final battle. At that very instant, Sophia chants an incantation. Her magical power surges back, coursing through her veins. She rushes out of the chamber to aid Neil. Meanwhile, deep in the palace dungeon, Charles and Georgina manage to reach the queen's cell. They burst in, finding her shackled. With frantic, determined hands, they work to free her from her restraints. He summons a monstrous black cloud, darkening the sky, and aims its fury at Sophia. Neil pushes Sophia out of the way at the last second. Robert then grabs Neil again, lifting her off the ground to finish her. But he spots a figure fleeing the palace. The queen. He drops Neil to give chase. When he catches her, he finds it is Charles in disguise. Neil seizes the moment, grabs Sophia, and runs back into the palace. They find Thomas unconscious, the necklace's remnants now fully inside him. Neil orders her sisters to take the real queen and escape. Then, she begs Bali for one last favor, to enter Thomas's body and purge the dark magic, knowing Bali might not survive. Bali agrees, sacrifices himself by entering Thomas, and expels the corruption. Thomas awakens, healed. Robert returns, his power now drastically weakened with Thomas's purification. The black clouds part, and sunlight returns. Seizing the opening, Sophia stabs Robert in the back. He falls, defeated for good. In the aftermath, Sophia asks Neil to give false testimony to clear their family name. Neil refuses. She won't live a lie, even to avoid prison. Sometime later, the real queen offers Neil a prestigious position as her personal royal guard. Neil declines, still mourning the loss of Bali and her powers. Her only request is for the queen to restore her family's bar and home. The queen agrees. As Neil finally returns to her village to a peaceful life with her sisters, a familiar illuminated point appears in the sky. A final hopeful sign from Bali, the magical being who was the source of her strength. And the story ends here.